People have been deep-sea diving for nearly 70 years now. But it's only in the last 10 years they've gone deeper than 200 meters. Very brief incursions testing the limits of human physiology. Even then, not many have been able to stay down more than 30 minutes. And that can seem like an eternity when the ascent requires almost 5 hours of decompression time. This twilight world is a new space for exploration by man, one that hides rare and unknown species. The most famous of them, the coelacanth, the survivor of a distant time and the living witness to an evolutionary bifurcation dating back 380 million years. To face this creature is to go back in time. For nearly a century, the coelacanth has been the passion of researchers and the bane of creationists. It was believed extinct for 65 million years, and yet it embodies a great event, the day a fish first left the ocean to reach the open air. And, as a result, a few million years later, man would be born. It's like finding a dinosaur still alive. Paleontology teaches us that 500 million years ago, certain soft-bodied animals were endowed with spines. Stronger than the others, they made great evolutionary strides and conquered new spaces. They formed the family of vertebrates that separated into two branches 380 million years ago. Some continued to evolve underwater into the fish we know today. Others, though, made dry land and became amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. The coelacanth appeared at around the time of this evolutionary bifurcation.
So the coelacanth is the most important zoological discovery of the 20th century. It had been known to 19th century paleontologists for a very long time. And they'd already determined from fossils that, with the bones in its pectoral and pelvic fins, it resembled a transitional form between an aquatic and a terrestrial animal. Coelacanths, therefore, were considered closely related to terrestrial vertebrates. But since they were only found in their fossil state, paleontologists of the 19th and early 20th century assumed they'd disappeared along with the dinosaurs. So in 1938, when a coelacanth was brought to the surface in South Africa, it was big news. There were headlines like, "Our great-great-grandmother has been found," "The dinosaur fish," etc. It's been in formalin for 50 years and it's still well preserved.
But I did rinse it a bit.
With the discovery in 1938 of a coelacanth caught in the nets of a South African fisherman, paleontologists' dreams were coming true. Now they'd be able to understand the conditions which led to the vertebrates leaving the water, especially when they discovered it had primitive lungs. In the 1950s, it created a frenzy among researchers. Catches increased, and science was able to understand its anatomy down to the smallest detail. Studies conclusively determined that today's coelacanth is not the same one that rose to the challenge of dry land. Its ancestor has remained down in the depths, adapting itself to the abyss, and its lungs have regressed. But studies have shown that it is a distant forefather, whose appearance has changed very little over 380 million years, as if frozen in time. The first encounter between a man and a coelacanth was back in 2000. It was not until 2010, though, that this unlikely event would be photographed and shown to the world. proof that we can now study the coelacanth in its natural environment at a depth of 120 meters. This feat was accomplished by Laurent Balesta, deep-sea photographer and biologist. His photographs, unrivaled to this day, have fascinated the scientific community, which was indeed Laurent's goal. The quality of his images is evidence of a new expertise in extreme deep-sea diving. Now research on the coelacanth could become much more ambitious, taking DNA samples from a maximum of coelacanths without harming them, studying their mysterious peduncle fins with a specially invented slow-motion 3D camera, and finally, attempting to tag them in order to study migration patterns. It took Laurent 3 years to set up this scientific expedition, and it was paleontologist Gil Kébaïli who was the first to see the potential of his new approach. Together, they developed a new camera system that would break down every movement of the coelacanth's fins. Though heavy and cumbersome, it would have to descend to 120 meters and move delicately in order not to scare the fish.
Looks like it's done.
It's finished. Still needs a few tweaks, but the basic idea's there. It's really heavy. I don't know how you're going to carry it.
No, but it should be all right in the water. Might even be too light. We'll have to weigh it down. And there'll be 2 monitors, the master for this camera and the slave for that one. We'll have to find a handle for the side. There's a good handle here to adjust the... you know, to establish the field of vision. But if the animal moves to the right or the left, you lose it.
So you need a side handle?
Handle there to...
Okay.
We'll add these accessories after.
Focusing this dual camera, nicknamed the giraffe, takes hours of practice. The most difficult thing will be to get the coelacanth in the crossfire of the 2 lasers. This is the mission's most important piece of equipment because it means fin movements can be analyzed in 3 dimensions. And those fins are the origins of our own arms and legs. Laurent Balesta and his team attempt their first deep dive with their giraffe camera. Deep-sea diving has undergone a revolution with the development of new, self-contained breathing systems. Aqualung systems that recycle exhaled air to increase their self-sufficiency. With each breath, the gas mixture is analyzed, carbon dioxide is expelled, then enriched with oxygen, and it's all managed electronically and controlled by the diver. With this type of equipment, you can stay down at 120 meters for more than 30 minutes with a decompression stop of 4.5 hours and no extra gas cylinders. Limits have been extended, but it all took 10 years of development, as well as daily physical training with just one aim, to go deeper and stay longer, so science can try out new procedures that are too tricky for robots or submarines. These are groundbreaking images, but researchers also want to know more about the coelacanth's migrations. So Gil Kébaïli and his team have come up with a tag to attach to the animal's back, the main point being not to harm the fish. Laurent will thus slip between the scales a hook attached to the tag, which will continuously monitor the depth, brightness, and temperature of the water.
The hook will release the tag after 9 months.
For over a decade, South African scientists have been sending down remote-controlled robots to explore the Sodwana canyons in search of coelacanths. Peter Tim discovered the hiding place of the coelacanth, the rarest and most sought-after fish in the scientific world.
Yeah, there's a U-shaped cave. Yeah, that's it.
Peter knows that the coelacanth is particularly fond of the caves formed over 20,000 years ago, at a time when the sea level was 120 meters lower. It was here, back in 2000, that Peter came face to face with the animal. He is the only one able to bring Laurent Ballester to where the coelacanths sometimes take refuge.
But look, there is light. You see that there is a little bit of light?
Yes.
That means that the chimney is
Yes.
a sink.
The canyon they want to explore is gigantic. There are hundreds of caves where the coelacanth may be hiding. Laurent has to find them, and that means really believing it's possible. In this twilight world, Laurent discovers rare species that have never before been glimpsed by naturalists. But the main quest is still for the coelacanth. Elsewhere in the world, in the Comores or in Indonesia, they live around 300 or 400 meters deep. At those depths, only robots can be used. The Sodwana canyons off South Africa are the perfect opportunity. Coelacanths have never swum as high as 120 meters, and scientists have never dived so deep. It's as if each has made an effort to meet the other.
The objectives of this project are extremely ambitious. Actually, it's almost impossible. Gil Kébaïli explained the scientific protocol to us. He said, it's difficult enough to go down 20 meters for a clownfish. We're going for a rare species at 120 meters. So, of course, it's very challenging. I'm not telling you that to put you under any pressure, of course. On the contrary, it's to make clear that nobody's obliged to do the dive. No, it's very dignified to be able to say, I just don't feel like it today, guys. Much more dignified than saying, okay, better to do it to keep up appearances. Well, maybe it's not quite like that, but I hope at least that spares us a bit of the inevitable anxiety. In any case, in 2010, we couldn't avoid it because the dives took place anyway. I wish I had some great philosophical statement for you, but all that comes to mind is what the Manchester United coach said to his players when they took to the pitch.
Just enjoy the game.
It's the first day of scientific diving. 5 divers are preparing to spend more than 4 hours underwater, 30 minutes of which will be more than 100 meters deep. An expedition like this requires at least 2 boats, 3 rescue divers, and a lot of spare gas cylinders.
Okay, Bob, right.
Peter Tim must estimate the strength of the current, which changes every day. The buoy thrown overboard is monitored by a GPS system. It will drift for exactly 5 minutes.
How long, Bob? 4 minutes.
From it, Peter deduces the speed of the surface current to determine the exact location of the dive.
Done 100 meters in 5 minutes. So there's very little current, but it's going that way. So we'll drift from the deep water going to the shallow. The shallow is that side. So we're on the other side of the canyon now. We're normally that side, we're this side now. But the current will take us to the shallow water.
Okay, guys, on the word go, eh? Okay, 1,
2, 3, go!
The 5 divers have begun their descent immediately, so as not to be carried away by the surface current, which is often stronger than the one deep down. The descent has to be quick, 2 minutes to reach 100 meters. The water pressure increases very rapidly on the body and strains the eardrums. With practice, these divers know how to equalize their ear pressure without pinching their noses, which allows them to speed up their rate of descent. Little by little, the breathing mixture is enriched with helium to prevent nitrogen narcosis. Will they land in the right spot, or should they keep going? A huge site for very few coelacanths, and every minute counts. The search begins.
So the divers have just descended with their dual camera, the giraffe camera, to capture the coelacanths in motion. The purpose of these 2 high-resolution cameras is to study the delicacy, the complexity of the coelacanth's manner of swimming.
The smallest cavity must be explored, so some of the divers even have to descend to more than 135 meters. But the deeper you go, the more your blood is saturated with inhaled gas, so you'll need endless decompression stops during the ascent. Divers never forget that, so going further down is always worrying. With the giraffe waiting nearby, Laurent continues his search between 120 and 135 meters. And his efforts are soon rewarded. giraffe camera films the movements of the coelacanth from 2 angles, as well as in slow motion and in 3 dimensions. Lasers are used to guide the cameraman, who must only start filming when the beams hit the animal's body. You can't film for long. At 500 images per second, each shot can only last 4 seconds.
The coelacanth's manner of swimming is extraordinary, first of all, because most of its fins are peduncular. That's to say, they're attached to the end of a little socket which is covered with scales. And when you dissect these sockets, there are bones inside, just like the beginnings of feet in terrestrial vertebrates, and of arms as well.
The divers have been down deep for 20 minutes now, but have only had 12 minutes with the coelacanth. Time's going by. They know that just 6 additional minutes at 100 meters will cost them an extra hour of decompression. Today, it's the coelacanth itself that calls a halt by disappearing into the abyss. The divers begin their ascent, and immediately signals are sent up.
There's Thibault's boy. And everything's okay. No cause for alarm.
23 minutes.
23 minutes, not bad. That means they had something to do down there. We'll have to wait a few hours now to get the whole story.
Well, now we're happy. All the buoys are up, no emergency signals. Now we just keep an eye out from time to time.
30 minutes after the signals come up, Saint-Louis joins the other divers 40 meters below at the first decompression stop to make sure everything's okay and to check each diver's decompression time.
So we're happy. 5 boys, 5 divers down there. No more stress. All we're waiting for now is to see what's written on the board. Because then we'll know if they saw the coelacanth or not, and if they managed to film it.
We're on borrowed time.
Absolutely. I'm living on borrowed time right now.
This slate is the only link between the divers and the scientists waiting at the surface.
Gombessa, yes, big, very big.
Big.
If he wrote big, very big...
It must be big.
Exactly. Maximum depth, 114.
But it's not huge. They must have spent the entire dive with it because it went back up to the sandy shoal. That's the best thing they could have hoped for.
What a dive.
It's so great to see it.
In fact, I had it planned out. When you get in front of the cave, now I know at what depth you have to be to see it far enough ahead and still be 5 or 10 meters outside. So I arrived and I was well balanced. I still had my lamp shut off. I tried to get used to the darkness. I turned it on and then it's 2 eyes there at the back. So,
Yes, it's great.
you like our shots?
They're great. They're perfect.
Really?
There you've got the entire animal. You've got the movement in one shot, and in the other shot, you've got the movement for the same fin.
Oh, that's great. It looks like they work like oars.
Right, like oars. And everyone was just focusing on the 2 pectoral and the 2 pelvic fins, since they were supposed to be the feet.
The ancestors of our feet.
But nobody had ever looked at the...
The 2 other fins that are also peduncular.
Yes. And apparently, from what we can see here, and in all the images Yannick has provided us with, they're the most active ones.
The most active and the most flexible, the most mobile. It can really turn like a wrist in all directions.
For a stationary analysis, it's perfect. Next, if we could really get a lateral view of the coelacanth.
That's what we do now?
Ideally, but it's not an ideal world with these conditions.
Yeah, especially 120 meters.
That would be great.
Well, we'll go back tomorrow.
The dance of the coelacanth.
The days go by and the dives continue. Everything goes smoothly. The atmosphere remains studious and focused, with an emphasis on security. Laurent Balesta's team has never had an accident so far. The scientific protocol is becoming more complex, and the team finally gets the authorization from the Isi-Mangaliso Wetland Park to tag the coelacanth.
It's also the most disturbing thing for the animal, but it can't be avoided. It's what we call tagging.
In any case, the tip will remain in that layer of fat just under the scales,
Well, this part here actually goes into the animal.
which floats around a bit. How long will it stay on?
Oh, it's programmed for 9 months.
And then there's a kind of electrolysis and it just comes off.
Yes, it disintegrates. After 9 months, midnight, the tag floats up to the surface.
And sends all its data.
We can do a lot with these summaries sent by satellite. The difficulty is actually finding the tag because it's got all the data in it. That means daily readings, temperature, light and pressure readings. So we could get more stuff, but finding it is very difficult.
Isn't there a little message on it if someone finds it?
Yes.
If it washes up on the beach?
Well, there's the phone number and email address of the company that supplied the tag. And then we add a small reward. And anyway, we have the GPS positioning.
So we can hang out on the beach.
Well, it's not super accurate, but Peter said as soon as we see the tag is stabilized on shore, if it's not too far, he'll go down there with some of his team and look for it.
That'd be great.
It'll be nice. There you go.
Okay, I'm tooled up. Let's go.
This dive didn't go as smoothly as usual. Nothing major, but at such depths, a simple misunderstanding can mess up the mechanics of the dive. The coelacanth was outside its cave, but not placed right, and the divers couldn't complete all their experiments.
We had to take DNA samples. We had to test whether the fish was willing to eat the bait we offered it. Plus, we had to use the giraffe. So a lot of things to do, too much protocol and too much underwater confusion. We didn't know whether to please the scientists or concentrate on the filming. We had so much to do, we didn't know what to think.
As a result, we were disorganized. We didn't really take advantage of the few minutes we had on the bottom. And in the end, we ended up with a lot of decompression stops and not much to show for it. Not much in terms of scientific experiments or filming either.
It's very difficult for a scientist. We have so little time. We really want to get results, so we ask them, so can you do that? Yes. And that too? Yes. And that? Yes. I think the divers try to do their best. They say yes when I think they should have told me no.
But even an unsuccessful dive comes with a price because of the interminable decompression stops. In the great oceanic desert, any floating object, including divers, becomes a luxurious haven for very young fish that are lost, hungry, and defenseless. Over the hours, the divers attract more and more unusual encounters, which just end up by distracting them. Coming from nowhere, it's like spontaneous generation. They put on an entertaining show for tired divers. They're like your little decompression pals. But when you attract small fish, you also attract the big ones. Today, the divers encounter a silver-finned shark, much bolder than the others. The hook and fishing line hanging from its mouth have probably made it more nervous. Several times, Laurent has to gently push it away. But this unexpected visitor isn't the worst news.
The water was too warm for the coelacanth. At 143 meters, it was still 24 degrees. There were no temperature layers, nothing.
That's bad news for the end of the mission. Never mind. We'll see.
Here's the latest news.
There's nothing.
Nothing like no fish.
No fish.
Just one would be nice.
Nothing.
For 8 days now, the divers in Jessa Canyon have come up with nothing. Laurent Ballester is getting skeptical. He's really been relying on the underwater maps to locate new caves.
The reason is okay.
On this boat, they have the latest multi-beam echo sounder, capable of, from the surface, giving them a glimpse of this invisible world.
We're in an area which is relatively unknown. Peter has a lot of experience. He's made a lot of dives, but he found spots by chance. He didn't really know where he was. With this kind of equipment, you can really clarify things and make a precise mapping of all the structures at the bottom. Here we have the results on this color gradient map, which is actually a 3D image. You can look at it flat, but you can also move it around to find all the caves and overhangs, things like that. So there are several steps. There's the general mapping. We accurately mark the interesting spots. Afterwards, we send an ROV out over it, and finally the divers.
There we go.
Despite the technology and all the new caves identified, the coelacanth still can't be found. Laurent and his divers cover several kilometers underwater during the next 5 dives. The caves are empty. Since they can't film, the team take water and sand samples likely to contain the coelacanth's DNA. In the laboratories, scientists will even be able to isolate the DNA suspended in seawater. There's only 1 week of diving left, and the scientific protocols are far from complete. Laurent really needs to know, do the coelacanths return to their caves at other times of the day? How do they come and go? What are their habits? This is surely Laurent's last chance to come up with answers about this enigmatic fish. Laurent wants to try installing a camera for a few days at a depth of 120 meters. A device programmed to take a picture every 10 minutes over a 5-day period, somewhat like a surveillance camera. A better understanding of the fish's comings and goings would allow for fine-tuning of the diving schedules if the spy camera reveals that it comes back at other times. Five days later, they're still waiting.
The pictures are in. The moment of truth is near.
We're all with you.
It'll all start near the surface, I think. There's the cap. That was the day it was set up. For the moment, the cave is empty. The sun's rising. So that's Saturday. Okay, it's night.
A day and a half.
It's out of focus.
Sunday. Sunday, no coelacanth in the cave. There are a lot of fish.
Well,
It's hopeless. Maybe it showed up when we weren't there.
there you go. That leaves just this morning, and then this morning till 10.
Shit.
Yeah, shit.
No coelacanth for 8 days. Theoretically, the water at 110 meters is too warm at the moment. 24 degrees, which is way too high for those depths. So we're waiting for underwater tide changes, so there'll be colder water at the 110 meter level in the caves. But it's been 8 days with no coelacanth. So it's very stressful waiting for the weather and current changes.
This is the last day of diving, and yesterday the water temperature was back down to 20 degrees at 120 meters, an encouraging sign. The last dive will take place in Jessa Canyon's main cave, where the coelacanths were last seen. The tag has been activated. This will be the most important operation as the mission winds up.
This is it. If we can stop worrying and start concentrating, because there won't be a second chance.
1, 2, 3, go!
It's a tense moment.
Yes, very. This is the big one. As for the divers, I don't know why they're so tense. They know they've given it their all, they've done everything. I think they still want to do more for us.
Yes, and it's the last chance to see it, too. It's pretty frustrating.
The descents are faster and faster, as if the divers no longer suffer from the pressure, but rather embrace it. Like astronauts landing on another planet, they're in a kind of time warp. 2 minutes to go down 100 meters, but 4.5 hours to come back up. A universe 1,000 times more dense than our atmosphere, and with 10 times the pressure. A parallel world, just 100 meters from our own. And the coelacanth is there. On the very last day of diving, it all turns out to have a happy ending. The divers know there's just 30 minutes left on this expedition to finish all their scientific tasks and catch up all that lost time. They begin by taking a DNA sample. With a cotton swab on the end of a pole, they stroke the coelacanth to get a mucus sample. This way, they can find out if the different South African coelacanths are all members of the same family. Suddenly, an angel goes by. A manta ray appears over their heads. It's an exciting event, but nothing must now distract them from their mission. Every second counts. The coelacanth is coming out of its cave, so they have to try for some more shots with the giraffe camera. These shots, with the coelacanth swimming and moving about, are what they've been waiting for. And the trickiest task remains. The very last moments are saved for the tagging. This is the first time a diver has tried this on a coelacanth. Attaching the tag has to be done as gently as possible. Laurent slowly approaches it from behind and hooks the tag between its scales. For 9 months, this little tag will record the movements of the coelacanth. Then it will detach automatically and float to the surface to deliver its data to science.
Here it is, right over there.
Ah, voilà. Ah! No!
They tagged it. There was one coelacanth, and they tagged it.
Yes, we tagged it. What's a really good end, no?
Tags, scooters. Bye, guys.
So there you go, finished. But it's ending almost as well as it started.
There was the coelacanth at the bottom. It had this thing on its ass. I pulled it off. I thought maybe you could use it. I saw it and I was bam! I took it off. I'll give this to Gael, he'll love it.
You've been planning that gag for a long time.
I've been diving with it for a week.
Well, we'll just wait for its little sister to come back up.
It will take months, even years, for the researchers at the Museum of Natural History in Paris to analyze all the data accumulated during the 6 weeks of this mission in South Africa. Man can now meet with coelacanth, and a whole new era for research has opened up.
You really feel like you're swimming with a coelacanth.
Yes.
See how it stabilizes itself.
These images can be transferred to a program that can simulate how the coelacanth swims. And we'll even be able to look through the scales and see the skeleton of the fins in motion. The complex mechanisms of the coelacanth's fin synchronization will be revealed. It's a veritable trip back through time, covering 380 million years. And researchers have high hopes for the tag attached to the very last coelacanth encountered by the divers. Now, maybe they'll finally understand the behavior, movements, and migrations of this mysterious animal.
And there, the coelacanth isn't stressed at all. It's swimming. It's fluid.
With this mission, researchers have proved that their scientific protocols can work well without disturbing the coelacanths, and at depths of up to 120 meters. To meet the coelacanth was a childhood dream for Laurent Ballester, and never before has he gone so far in all his three passions: diving, photography, and science. Laurent and his team went in search of a legendary fish and found an entire ecosystem, a twilight world where every second counts and where any meeting seemed highly improbable. But that brief encounter, when it came, was an unforgettable one. Down here in the abyss, though, everything is yet to be revealed. And in his quest for the coelacanth, Laurent Ballester discovered and photographed two other fish hitherto completely unknown to science. A new world is there for the divers to explore. Of course, there's only one coelacanth, but there will always be other adventures.